Hello, Michael.
Yes, hi. How are you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm all right.
bit
And
busy.
you?
Yeah, same.
A bit busy, yes.
Busy, but it's a great Congress, and
Yes.
I like the people, and the work is good. So,
Yeah,
and the weather's been good.
the
So,
weather's been good.
yeah,
So how many congresses have you done already?
this is the 13th. Now, I haven't been director of all of them, but I've been director of 1, 2, 3, or 4. But I've been to all of them, and I've
Yes.
always been in the background some way.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe we can start right at the beginning. So how did you first hear about the Alexander technique? And
Well, I heard about it when I was an apprentice actor at the Tyrone Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis. The voice movement teacher, who was named Fran Bennett, who had gone to Central School here in London, England, told me about it, and I asked, what is this Alexander technique? And Fran said, well, it's an approach to movement where the actor learns to deal with fear and stage fright. And I went, oh my God, Fran, I didn't know anything existed to help with stage fright. I'm the most freaked out actor that ever existed. How can I study it? She said, well, there's no teachers in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. There's one in Chicago, a handful in New York. But she said, I know you want to go to England to further your acting training. And then she said an important phrase. She said, just trust. You'll find someone. And so I was fortunate enough to get into the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School in Bristol. That was 1971. And I just trusted. One thing led to another. I ended up at a school in the Cotswolds, sort of like a Hogwarts Academy without people flying around on broomsticks. Pretty much everything else, though. And they offered the Alexander technique as an extra. You paid a little, not much, a little extra money to have Alexander lessons. And so I had lessons there, and met a wonderful woman who I married. Laine Zellweger was her maiden name. And anyway, we got married, and then we'd had lessons there at the school. And afterwards, when we graduated, we said, well, what should we do? And at the school, we studied all the various religions of the world in a very practical way. It wasn't theoretical. But we were studying a Buddhist from India named Shiva Puri Baba, of all names. He had written a book called The Long Pilgrimage. And in there, the first precept that he would teach people is that the first thing, you have to learn to take care of this whole instrument and keep yourself healthy. So my wife Laine and I were about 28 years old or thereabouts. And we said, well, what's the best thing we could learn? And it was the Alexander technique. So we went off to London, England, and trained with Walter Carrington and Dilys Carrington for 4 years, 3 to get certified, a 4th postgraduate, and that was the beginning of it all. So that's in a short version what happened.
What were your experiences at the training? What was your
With
process?
Carrington?
Yeah.
Well, you had an extraordinary human being. I think people forget that the Alexander technique was born out of a time of 2 world wars, World War I and World War II. And so the people who had dealt with that had really suffered on both sides. It's always the common person that suffers. And Walter had flown Halifax bombers. He was a pilot, and he was shot up over Hungary. And the plane was going down. He ordered his whole crew to bail out, and finally he bailed out. And anyway, he was caught by the German army and put in a prisoner of war camp. And then he pretended to escape being a Jesuit priest. And as a young man of like 13, 14, he thought, maybe I'll become a Jesuit priest. So he knew something about what that meant. So anyway, he pretended to be a Jesuit priest, and he escaped. I only bring this up because he had lived life, and he had seen danger and death. And he knew that life was precious, and he also knew that you had to have a certain vigor to survive. He was extremely kind, very kind, and you felt that. So when you trained with him, you just felt accepted. You felt like he saw and heard you and supported you. And then you go through all the stuff of training to be an Alexander teacher, the ups and downs and the doubts and all of that, the insecurities. Yes. But you always felt like he was there, you know, in a very important way.
Yeah.
And that gave you a certain solace inside that maybe I don't know what I'm doing, but I felt that Walter was there and he cared about you, so you're going to make it. That was what it was like. And plus he was an excellent craftsperson. He really understood the technique, and he had specifically figured out how to teach hands-on work, and how, you'll understand this, but it all grew out of the procedure of hands-on backup chair, which is the primary procedure that F.M. Alexander gave you besides whispered awe.
Yeah.
And both were taught thoroughly at the school. Anyway, that's without boring anyone watching this with that sort of thing, but that's what happened. That was the foundation. And finally, when he was always supported of these congresses, you know, he came to every one. The last one that he could do, the last one that he came to was in Oxford, England. It was the last time I saw him. And I miss him because I used to say, hey, Walter, and he'd be very nice to you, and you'd sit down and have a talk. And he'd always be interested in catching up. I'll say one thing that was so important to me personally.
Yeah.
I had a son who committed suicide, which was a heartbreak. I mean, a magical kid, but there's nothing you could do. Walter knew him very, very well, from birth even. And because I was living at the Carrington school when he was born. So I'm living in Ojai, California, and John Michael, that was his name, had died. I get a phone call from Walter, and he said, Michael, it's Walter. Above all, remember, you are not at fault.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, thank you, Walter.
Yeah.
And that's how he was with everyone. It wasn't just with me.
Yeah.
You know, that's how, and when he died, when Walter Carrington died, I wasn't able to go to the reception. It was at the church in London overflowed with people spilling into the streets, and the one word that people said that was there describing Walter was magnanimous. Now that's what it was training with him, and I just feel, bless my lucky stars that I knew Walter and Dilys. Dilys was tough. You know, she was a fabulous teacher, but she wouldn't let you slide away at all. So anyway, that was what it was like. And for an American living in Holland Park was way beyond the cornfields of northern Illinois that I grew up in.
And apparently people from other continents didn't have to wait?
Well, that's not true. We were on the waiting list, and we waited a good year to get in. And so at that time, Laine and I lived in Hertfordshire, north of London, in a little, outside a very little community called Bovington. And we lived in a coach house because, it was very trendy to redo your coach houses because no one had coaches anymore and turn them into like really lovely little places to live, and we were living in one. And it was just one of those salad days of one's youth where you're living someplace and you almost pinch yourself, is this real? And
quite a change from the States.
Yeah, a change from the States and all the things. I always say to people, wherever, whether you're an American or a Canadian and you want to train in something in Europe, I say go do it. Living there will be the education. Go to Germany. My youngest daughter just did 6 months in Germany studying. It was her senior year. No, it was actually, her senior year. Part of it was abroad. And, it's life-changing.
Very valuable.
And That's exactly right. So,
Yeah.
you know, and then I also say to Europeans, yeah, go to the States, go to Canada, go study.
When I came from Berlin to London to do the training.
Yeah, but it's an experience, isn't it?
Exactly. It's good to do something new in a new place.
And I know, and I have so much respect for people like you because you speak at least 3 languages, I would bet. You see, because I grew up in, you know, growing up, America is so huge
Yeah.
that growing up in the Midwest, I didn't meet my first foreign person until I was 17. It was a German
wow.
from Düsseldorf named Sven, and I promptly made him my friend, and because it was unique,
Yeah.
you see.
Yeah. I understand.
So, yeah, travel,
Yeah.
train any place.
Yes. So after your training, did you go back to the States immediately?
Yeah, we did.
or-
Well, yeah, we did because we had 2 children that were born.
Yeah.
Both in London, and so we became involved in the work of J. Krishnamurti, who is a teacher, and he had a school, it still exists down in Hampshire, England, Brockwood Park, and my late wife. I didn't mention this, but she had died of breast cancer, which was like really a big deal. But I mean, that's a sort of superficial way of putting it. It was a shock.
Of course.
But
yeah.
the thing is that she was Swiss, but she had trained at Yale School of Drama as a theater director, and I had been at the Old Vic training as an actor. So we would go to Brockwood to hear Krishnamurti speak when he was there, a dialogue with, you know, a couple thousand people. But they said, well, why don't you teach drama here? And so we'd go down from the Walter Carrington School on the weekends before the kids were born and teach. And we thought the quality of education was superb because it was simple. You wanted to have equal balance between high academic learning, the usual reading, writing, arithmetic, and all the other stuff, and contact with nature.
No,
It had to be equal balance.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's great. And she did too. And with our kids, we wanted to put them in a similar type of school. And the only place to do that, unless we wanted to go to India, was in Ojai, California, a little town about an hour and a half north of LA and about 45 minutes south of Santa Barbara. And so we moved there sight unseen to put our kids in the private school there.
Yeah.
It was a smart choice. Just because of that balance between academics and nature. So
And
that
then-
took us to America, and then I started teaching and sort of, then I get this idea to do a Congress, which my wife thought would be an absolute failure at the beginning. Well, she originally, because it's a big gamble.
So how did the whole idea grow?
Yeah, okay, the way it grew, in around we arrived in Ojai in 1979, and I missed all my friends in London. Laine did too. So we decided to run a residential retreat workshop on the Alexander technique for a week. And I found a beautiful venue in Ojai. It's a gorgeous valley. It's just magical, actually. And so I found this venue. And so we decided to run a workshop from like December 27th to January 1st, something like that. And I invited all my friends from England to come over and teach, the teachers that I trained with. And I said, I can't afford to pay you a salary, but if you come over, I'll pay you for your airplane fare and your room and board. To a person, they immediately signed up. People like John Nichols came and the whole crew. A guy named Michael Gelb, who wrote Body Learning. All these people, we were just young kids, in their 30s teaching, but came over, and it was such a success because in those years no one knew the Alexander technique. We were like, as the phrase goes, fewer than hen's teeth, you see, and so it was unique, and so people wanted to explore what it was. So we would have full courses, usually 30 to 40 people, and so that happened. And then after a couple of years, there was a a couple who came on one of the retreats around we do it every year. It started in 1979, do it every year. And so this couple, Bob and Ruth Odell from the Bay Area, from San Francisco, were very wealthy. They owned the Four Seasons Hotel in San Francisco.
Okay.
You know, on that level, they owned what was called the Biltmore Hotel in Santa Barbara, which was the premier hotel in all of Santa. But they were incredibly good people and generous. They loved the Alexander technique. And I had this idea of making a movie on the Alexander technique.
Oh, great.
And so I had met a man named Joel Geyer, a film director for public television, and he knew, this is funny how connections work, his old girlfriend, who was still on good relationship, was a producer for Nova, which was a science program. So I put the script together, and then Bob Odell hears about it, and he gives me $20,000 in 1982 money, which is a lot more than the...
Yes.
And to see if we could seed money, to see about getting this going. So I hired this film director, Joel Geyer, to travel around the world talking to senior Alexander teachers to see if there was enough science to put a Nova project together. So Joel did that, and he came back. I remember having dinner. Laine and I were there in Lincoln, Nebraska, and he had already made a 30-minute film on Marj Barstow for public television. So I knew he knew about the technique. So anyway, we were having dinner with him, and he said, you know, the thing is, Michael, we can't make a film for Nova. There's not enough hard science today to do it. Now there may be, but not back then. He said, you know, I traveled around, talked to all these people who knew FM Alexander or teachers. They're so fragmented, he said. What you need to do is an international congress to bring people together. And the penny dropped right at that second. He was sitting to my right, like you are. To my left was Marj Barstow, the first person FM Alexander was certified to teach. And then my wife was there and a couple other people. So the moment the penny dropped, which was like nanoseconds after he said that, I turned to Marj and I said, Marj, if I organize an international congress, will you come? She said, yes.
Great.
So I figured I got one of the four main branches.
Yes.
So then I think the hardest one would be Patrick McDonald. But I get hold of Patrick, and he said yes right away. So I had two. Then I think Walter's going to be easy. You know, Walter and Dilys, because I trained with them and they liked me, and I lived at their house for 2 years. So I asked Walter, and to my surprise, he said, I'm not coming unless Bill Barlow comes. And he said it like that, a little strong. Well, the thing was I was good friends with Marjorie Barlow. Don't get mixed up with Marj Barstow from Lincoln, Nebraska. Marjorie Barlow, FM Alexander's niece, married to Bill Barlow in London, running a training course. So I knew Marjorie well, and I said, Marjorie, please do some pillow talk with Bill. Get him to come. And to my surprise and happiness, I get a call from Marjorie Barlow saying, yes, Bill has agreed to come. So then I call up Walter, and it's the afternoon, and he's teaching, but the secretary at Lansdowne Road, where his school was in Holland Park, picks up the phone, and I say, please tell Walter that I got a message that Bill Barlow's coming. I think, boy, I'm home free. I got them all. And then the middle of the night, I'm taking like 3:34 in the morning, my phone rings. You know, before cell phones, I had a phone right on the desk, right near the bed. I pick it up, I say, hello, Michael, this is Walter, I'm coming. Boom. And that was very not quite like Walter. I've only seen him upset a couple times in all the years that I've known him. But I played cards, you see, and I laid my ace down and I won.
Wow.
But he was so
fantastic.
generous. I was worried. I find a venue in Stony Brook University on Long Island. I figured that's good. People can fly into New York and get there. It's easy. So we have this great venue, but then I'm thinking, oh my God, the Barlows are coming and the Carringtons are coming, and Marj Barstow and Patrick and Shoshana, Patrick McDonald and his chief assistant, Shoshana Kamadas. They're not going to get along. So I spent a lot of money for boutique little hotels.
Far away.
Yeah,
from
with
each
a
other.
private driver for each one, a car and a driver, had it all set
Oh,
up.
wow.
In hindsight, I could have put them all in the same hotel. They were so kind to each other that they really buried the hatchet, as the phrase go. It was lovely. They were up there. In fact, the two polar opposites in the various tribes that existed were probably the MacDonald tribe and the Marj Barstow tribe.
Okay.
You know, because its styles were so different in teaching. Well, it turns out I'm standing with Frank Ottewell. He was a wonderful teacher, one of the best in North America in San Francisco. Anyway, I'm standing with Frank Ottewell and Marj Barstow and myself. And this is at the first Congress at Stony Brook, at the very beginning, the first day, and there's Marj Barstow walking down the hallway towards us. And Patrick lit up and went over to Marj, and he did this. He took her hands, and he held her hands like this, and he said, "Oh, Marj, it's so wonderful to see you. You know, dear, you were the best of all of us. You had the best hands." And Marj goes, "Oh, come on, Patrick. You know that's not true. But let's go do a little work together." And so they went into a room. I wouldn't let people in there because I wanted this, they were at their own time. And they did. They were so kind to each other. They were almost like old lovers seeing each other after, because they probably hadn't seen each other since at least the 40s, if not the 30s.
Wow.
And that is the truth. So when I meet people who are sort of antagonistic from various camps, I tell that story because that's all stuff and all sort of rubbish that built up in years that
Because
followed.
they didn't see each other.
They didn't see each other, and you know, their styles were different. And instead of saying, "Hey, you do it this way and I do it that way," but we all love the Alexander principles. But in essence, that's how they felt, and that's how it was at the first Congress. It was incredibly humbling.
So it was actually a peace conference.
I never looked at it that way at the time. I looked at it like, oh my God, I got all the old guard on stage. Now what do I do? And I created master classes. So anyway, it all worked, and I filmed it. I filmed all my profit to the film crew because I knew this would never happen again.
Yeah.
Because they were all getting older, and Patrick had already had a minor stroke. You couldn't quite see it, but it was there. So I just figured, you know, get
And
it.
it's all recorded.
It's all recorded. You can see it. Yeah, it's fabulous. Just wonderful master classes. I filmed. That's what I filmed because I had each of them doing master classes. It was much simpler than here. Now there's 50 million classes every day, and people have to make choices, and you feel, oh my God, I want to do it all, but I can't. But back then, there were 4 main classes, and you had Marj Barstow, and then you had Marjorie Barlow. Well, maybe 5 because Bill Barlow sort of did his own thing. But you basically had Marj Barstow from Lincoln, Nebraska. You had Bill and Marjorie Barlow doing sort of their own thing separately from London. And then you had Patrick and Shoshana teaching together. And then you had Walter Dilys together. And it was just wonderful because I had everyone color-coded. You know, we had badges like we do here, but each one is color-coded. So on each day, you know,
You would have
you had to go to your color. And it was very obvious, you shouldn't be here, you're supposed to be over. And, you know, it just worked. It just flowed.
How
And
many participants were there?
250. And
Wow.
I know, not many. And if I said...
But that's a lot for the
it
first
is,
one
for the time.
in the States.
But if I would have these people alive today,
Oh, yeah.
I would get a couple thousand. I'd get every Alexander teacher on the planet
Yes.
coming.
Yeah.
But they're gone. But you know what we have is, instead of the master classes of the first generation of the Barlows and Carringtons and so on, I created continuous learning classes, which sort of is an offshoot of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's it.
Yeah.
And this is my last Congress, so I'm not doing it anymore. There's a board of directors and an executive committee and a nonprofit all set up in England to run these things.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna
lean back and participate.
Well, yeah, I will come. No, I'll come
Yes.
to them, but I'm not going to have anything to do with running.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
I
figure
that.
cut your losses. You know what I mean? When things are at a really, this is a fabulous Congress here, in 2025 here, and in Ireland.
It's amazing that it developed like that it's still happening.
Yeah, well, they all built on each other.
Yeah.
You see, and little refinements. I mean, we're refining right now ideas about the next Congress.
Yeah.
You know, how to enhance certain things, and hey, we don't need to do that. And
so have you figured out already where the next Congress will happen?
I have a good idea, but I can't talk about it. You'll know everything tomorrow.
Okay, there will be the big announcement?
There will be.
Okay, already with the directors?
Yes.
Oh, great, yeah.
It'll all be happening. And, I let them they're going to do what they do. You know, I think the best thing is you find good people.
Yeah.
You just let them do it. Like you. You're good at what you do. I don't micromanage. I don't want you to be micromanaged. I want you just to, as a photographer, to use your common sense and just do. Yeah. I think that's the way to work.
Yes.
You trust people's skill levels. Because I don't know very much about photography, but I know that you have probably spent decades learning what you learn. And so why not just tap into those decades?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Because then you feel respected and seen for all the hard work that you've done. And because we love the technique, that's the glue, then it all comes together. So, are you enjoying yourself?
I am, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's been your highlight? Without thinking too much, what pops into your mind?
Well, the thing is, I couldn't fully participate in the...
because of your work. Right.
Yeah,
At the same time, what sparked you? There must have been a moment.
I like the community aspect, and that really people meet, and the conversations, and all of that.
That is correct, and that's how I think that's the important thing. You know, we bring in all these great keynote speakers and things, but the truth is, it's the human contact.
Yeah.
And that's why, even though now we have streaming service and, it's on video and stuff, it's not the same. You know, I mean, you get information, but information is not the Alexander technique.
Yeah. Of course, it's only a fraction of...
It's fraction.
Yeah.
The Alexander work itself is experiential in nature. But me talking to you is real.
Yeah.
I'd much rather do this than having you on a Zoom call someplace.
Exactly.
And then...
That's why I want to do these interviews in person.
That's right. And it's working.
Yeah, of course.
And we haven't been too interfered with here. You know? It's always funny how people come up. Most people see something's happening. But then you get people who are sort of wrapped up in their own TV set going on in their mind, and they just walk.
Doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, you can, Thank you very much,
Michael.
My
pleasure. I really enjoyed it, actually.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I talked about all the process of the old guard finally saying yes.
Yes, exactly.
And so then I found a location, which was Stony Brook University on Long Island, and the date in the summer, and everyone came.
Yes.
We had 250 people, which I was happy. And I think I mentioned that if we had all those people live in here today, it'd probably have 1,500 to 2,000 people.
Why? Well, how did you manage to get so many people in?
Well, I had a knack of knowing people. And also because I was able to get the Carringtons and the Barlows and MacDonald and Shoshana and Marj Barstow, they all had a following.
Yeah.
And it was a unique thing. No one had ever done it. So it was like, wow. You mean they're all going to be there? Sort of Jesus Christ, Muhammad, the Buddha, and Zoroaster all in one place, so to speak.
Yeah.
I also wanted to have backup behind each. I didn't know how it was going to go. I thought there could be bickering and this and that. So what I had is behind each of the senior people who had trained with FM, I had 3 or 4 people who had trained with them. So I remember with Walter and Dilys Carrington, there was John Nichols and myself and Michael Frederick, and I think there was 1 or 2 other people, and then, I went down the whole line. So if you look, there's this little video of me introducing everyone, but what's really interesting is all the people sitting on stage behind the old guard. I was just talking to John Nichols a few minutes ago. I said, John, I think we're the only 2 people still living who are up on those stages.
Wow.
And it's true. But, life goes on and there's transitions, people live and die, and, here we are, and this is my last one, and that's about it.
But it's still running and still 600
No, it is, and it's not
people
dependent on
attend.
me.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. If I died tomorrow, it would still go on. Now I've set my goal for 105, so I'll be around
good.
for a while. But, at some point you just have to say enough already. It's got to go off on to other people.
Yeah.
New thinking.
Yeah.
This and that. And I feel fortunate that this Congress is going so well. The keynote speakers have been wonderful. All of that.
Yes,
So.
that's wonderful. Yeah.
But you wanted to ask about other things in my life, didn't you say?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we can come back to your own teaching, to your own development, and what other influences on your Alexander teaching were. Well,
the thing is that I realized that it's a trap to be an Alexander teacher. There's that phrase in Buddhism that if you're on the path and you meet Buddha, kill Buddha. You see? And it's actually a truism, because the fact is that if you get locked into defining yourself as anything, it's problematic. And so I didn't want to just define myself as an Alexander teacher for the rest of my life. So I go off and train with Moshe Feldenkrais. And I got so much flack over that. How come you're doing that? Don't you know he stole everything from FM? All of this rubbish. Partly true and partly not true.
Yeah.
And so, Feldenkrais was different. And I liked him. He was actually a bigger than life personality.
So you did the training because you met Feldenkrais?
Oh, I did the training because it was 1980. I knew he wasn't going to live forever. He was getting old. And I thought, wow. And he was also, his whole system was very, many people were interested in the early 80s in the Feldenkrais work. So I thought the only way to really understand it, the truth, was to train in it.
Yeah.
And then I could say, his work was like this, how I understood it, and the Alexander technique work was like that. Some of it overlaps, some of it doesn't. Feldenkrais understood all this and understood how habitual the system was in movement, and that you could change up the neurological connections by doing something non-habitual. It was fun. Well, what Feldenkrais understood is that we're always making choices by what feels familiar. Alexander understood that also.
Yes.
And then you get the concept of faulty sensory feedback because of the habitual mechanical pattern.
Yeah.
So there was overlap. I mean, I prefer the Alexander technique because the Alexander work really is on the side of the fence of non-doing.
Yeah.
It's almost more akin to Zen Buddhism and things like that. Feldenkrais work was on the other side of the fence of subtle doing.
Yeah.
But it's really good, high-quality subtle doing. And maybe some Feldenkrais people would obviously argue with me on this. But to me, the Feldenkrais work was absolutely state-of-the-art physical therapy, far beyond what most physical therapists learn.
Yeah.
Whereas the Alexander technique fitted me more because it had to deal with the fear reaction and the ability to go beyond our limited like and dislike thinking. And that's what really fired me up, because it had to do with inner freedom.
Yeah.
And to me, the Alexander work, if I really want to get a metaphysical about it, is a non-dualistic approach to life. And that's a big deal.
It is.
And what F.M. Alexander discovered was how to approach that with a mentor, someone you're studying with, who, to use metaphors to describe it, if you're going to climb a mountain, you're going to find the best mountain climber and teacher you can find on the planet who you have access to, and you're going to climb the mountain.
Yes.
All the teacher can do is help take you to the top of the mountain so you see through the clouds about where you need to go. They can't do anything else than that. And then the moment you see that, the far distance of potential of action, you're back down at the bottom of the mountain and you have to climb it yourself. And that was Walter Carrington. That was any of the old guard, Marj Barstow, Elizabeth Walker, you can name the Barlows, Patrick. They all understood that.
And did you take lessons with the other?
Yeah, because when I'm in London, I mean, you talked about how expensive London is today, even though you think it's fantastic. I could have Walter Carrington, one of the best teachers on the planet, for £3.50. And it makes you laugh, doesn't it? It was the same thing with all of them.
Yeah.
They had a phrase that was limiting. It's habit again. The phrase was, FM died in 1955, and we can't go above what FM charged. They would say, we can't go above what the old man charged. Well, the thing is, inflation came in. Of course, they didn't counter that in. So by the time this young American showed up at whatever I was, 27, you could have the best for nothing. Plus, 10p on the bus or the underground got you every place.
Very different now.
It is. And it's too bad almost, because the earning potential of people hasn't been kept up with the inflation. You see, so even in America, it's just hard to earn your living teaching something called the Alexander technique. Not impossible, but the technique is basically an art form.
It is.
It is, right. And so a lot of times people aren't used to paying that much for an art form. I mean, if it's a Picasso painting, they'll pay a lot of money. But they didn't maybe pay it when he was a young man. You see, it had to be a process. And it's the same thing with the technique. People, they undervalue it, and they'll say things, well, if I go to physical therapy, my insurance covers it. How come you don't? They give you stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, well, I'm not a therapist. I'm a teacher. And in our culture, teachers aren't revered like they should be. So that's a big story we don't need to go into, but it affects us. In my mindset, the idea of 3 years, Monday through Friday, made sense. I thought, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll sort of immerse myself in it for 3 years and hopefully learn skills, But now what people, they can't quite do that. Many times they can't afford it. They want to do modular things or 3 days a week. And that sets up its own problem, because there's something about what I call, in the middle of a 3-year program, a year and a half in, Monday through Friday, you hit the brick wall, and you don't want to. I don't want to hear anything about F.M. Alexander or have anyone put hands on me. But if you want to finish, you've got to continue it, and you go through that shock wave, that dark night of the soul, And then what happens, you cross over to the other side, and then you get a taste of what non-doing is.
Yeah.
If I am on module training, not that it doesn't happen, but it's easier to sort of have 2 days off and I can chill out, and then I can come back.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Absolutely, but I think it's different things for different people, and probably in the other models you hit different kinds of brick walls.
This is true, but that's true, and I don't know. I mean, I preferred what I had, but just because that's what I had. But if I read the book, Zen and the Art of Archery by Eugene Herrigel, this German who went to Japan, it's a perfect example. He's there for I don't know how many years, and he's still trying to hit the bullseye. Yeah. And that's what happens with young trainees. They're trying to hit the bullseye, metaphorically. What is the right thing? How do I place my hand? What's the right thing to do? Completely wrong questioning. It should be, what is it I don't need to do? How do I subtract? Yeah. And only when Herrigel, if you read the book.
We read it as the book in my first term.
Yes.
Anthony brought that
smart.
book, and it's
really... that's exactly what he understands.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Herrigel goes down on the holiday with the beach, specifically told, do not take your bow and arrow in practice. But of course he does, because in his Western thinking, practice makes perfect.
Trying hard. Yeah.
Try hard. And then what happens when he gets back to the dojo, the monk goes, turns him back on him, and I'm not going to teach you anymore. And he has to grovel to get back into it.
But maybe we can come back to the work. You said you trained with Moshe Feldenkrais, but you still afterwards called yourself an Alexander teacher and not a Feldenkrais teacher.
Because I was interested. I got into the Alexander technique because of the inner work. Yes. There was a path of transformation, not because of my bad back or migraine headaches or, I got into a little bit because of stage fright, but I'd sort of let go of the necessity of wanting to be an actor because it was, for most people it's just a dream of an illusion. But I mean, I love the art of acting, I love teaching actors, and I love theater. And I would love a culture that supported the arts more so that people wouldn't have to struggle so much.
Yes.
That's what I would like. But I realized that what's more important to me was understanding psychophysical re-education, what that really means. And that's what led me down the path.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason I started with Feldenkrais, and then I became interested in the work of J. Krishnamurti, this, I don't know what to call him, sort of an anti-guru, anti-teacher in the usual sense, because he was always debunking whatever your belief was. I mean, I loved it. I mean, it fired my rockets. He'd be at the Oak Grove in Ojai, California, and there'd be 3,000 people hear a pin drop in this huge oak grove. And he'd be sitting on a little chair and he would just look. You're all such lovely looking people. I wonder why you're here on a Sunday morning. It's a beautiful morning. You can see the mountains and clouds behind me. And what he would say something like, why are you here? Are you here because you expect an old man to save your life? I love that. It's like, yeah, but no. I mean, in your consciousness, because you're watching the program inside you. I mean, he would challenge, and he would do it in a way that wasn't negative. It was you were watching it. You were in dialogue with yourself, watching your program. Yeah. This is the same thing I'm connecting to the Alexander technique that Marj Barstow would do. That's the reason she was such a phenomenal teacher. She used to say to me, Michael, you're just standing there waiting for me to come and put hands on you because you like the feeling. I'm not going to do that, because that's not going to get you to learn anything except liking the feeling, and that's useless after a while because it's past tense. She said, if I see you do a little work on your own, then I'll come and work with you. boy, did that fire you up. You had to figure out what she meant. Now, I don't say those words with any slight whatsoever to Walter and Dilys Carrington, because there were times when I was training with Walter, you felt like your life was falling apart, and there you are in his office, looking out onto Lansdowne Road and the beautiful trees and the building across the street, and his hand would be on you, and you'd feel like everything in your world is going to be okay. I mean, that was a phenomenal feel of trust and a sense of deep love and caring.
Yeah.
And he didn't do that by, I think I'm going to go put hands on him to make him know how much I love him. It wasn't that at all. He was working from inside himself, of observing and inhibiting and expanding his own inner being and consciousness, coming back to length and width.
Yeah.
And then the quality of his life and touch was different because he worked on himself. He wasn't trying to end game getting you to feel better, which Marj wasn't either. They just had different sides of the same experiencing.
Yeah.
But that really spoke to me. And you know, then I would work with, I mean, it sounds like I would do this and do that. I just had the opportunity to have lessons with Marjorie Barlow. It was the same thing, just a different, or Elizabeth Walker. You know, they had, you know, Peggy Williams. Now, Peggy was a trap, though. Peggy was such a phenomenal teacher. And the first time Marj Barstow put hands on me, which was way before my Alexander training, about the fall of 73, the spring of 74, something like that, in Iowa City, Iowa, of all places. She put hands on, and my reaction inside myself was literally this: holy shit, her direction's just like Peggy Williams. It was phenomenal, and Peggy Williams' direction was the gold standard in those days in the 70s in London. But the difference was this: Laine and I would be in London waiting to go on to be trained with Walter and Dilys, having lessons with Peggy and other people. And we would go have lessons with Peggy, and you would feel like you're coated with inhibition. I'm not joking. That was a feeling, as if a paintbrush of inhibition had flowed all over you. And it would last for about 2 or 3 days afterwards. You had different perception. And then it would wear off. And then Laine and I would say, my God, we treated her like getting a fix. We need to go to have a lesson with Peggy again. You know, that was okay, but the beat that she missed was what Marj did, is saying, I'm not going to touch you till you do your own inner work. Now, so the quality of their hands-on work was quite similar, but that ability to get you to own your own work was so much more meaningful in the long run. I mean, it's easy. I mean, I could have loved having a lesson twice a week with Peggy. I mean, it was just marvelous. But there was something about the wake-up call that happened with Marj.
Okay.
Again, I'm careful in my conversation. I know it's recorded because I really love Peggy. She was such a really excellent teacher. I'm careful because all these people, in their own right, were excellent teachers.
Yes.
So it's just like blind men and the elephant. They all have a different aspect of the elephant and a way of accessing that elephant. And if you understand that, then you respect them.
Exactly.
And that's it. You know, Patrick was, I mean, I just thought he was fantastic. He was roguish. He was told not to have, I guess, ice cream or dairy or something. But he wanted to have ice cream parfaits, so we went down and we'd drink ice cream. This was at the first Congress. I mean, he was sort of like, I mean, he was good. You know, they all. Erica Whitaker was wonderful. You know.
Yeah.
So.
The work, as you said, brought you onto a spiritual path, let's say, and it was. Actually, the beginning was the Alexander work?
Well, it was my grandmother on my dad's side. As a little boy, she was the one person that loved me unconditionally. I'm not saying my parents didn't love me. I feel I had a good upbringing. But my grandmother was very special to me. I always remember her hands reaching out to me. I was about, about 3 feet tall or something. And you always felt like you were accepted. Yeah. And because of some quality she had, I always did what she wanted. I was a pretty rebellious little kid, but not with her. Yeah. She's always been my North Star. I was just graduated from university. It was probably the spring of 1968, and I happened to turn on public television, and there was this Indian under some oak groves talking, and I didn't know who it was, but the feeling it had was my grandmother.
Oh, okay.
There was a connection of feeling, of quality of listening, and what he said. It turned out to be Krishnamurti, a whole series he did for PBS, or it was filmed. I didn't know who he was, but what I knew, it resonated with my grandmother. Yeah, yeah. And that sort of carried through. I mean, I think I mentioned, while I was training to be an Alexander teacher, living at Walter Carrington's, a couple of summers, I went off to Turkey to study with some Sufi. Sufism is the esoteric side of Islam. The best way to think about it is the way this author Idris Shah wrote about a book called The Sufis. He considered Sufism as something separate from religion. Okay. And so the concept would piggyback on the back of religions. So when it piggybacked on the back of Islam, it became Sufism. But it could have been Buddhist in the past, or someone from a Taoist temple. It was a way of being. And so, but I went off to study with these Sufis, and it also changed my life because the quality. I mean, I met a man in London named Sheikh Nazim. He was Turkish, from Turkish Cyprus. His teacher, what he called his Grand Sheikh, was from Damascus. Sheikh Nazim was extraordinary. Here I am, American, completely different cultures. Yeah. He was so sophisticated. He didn't try to sell me Islam whatsoever. Yeah. 2, he could listen and tune into me. But he had qualities. I mean, and this sounds magical. I'm having a dinner with these Sufis in South London, some obscure place that I don't even know I got there. And we're eating Middle Eastern food. Anyway, he says to me, he takes some of that potato, pea, onion, he said, "Here, Majnoon, eat this." And he just puts it on my plate. I take a bite of it, and I swear to you, it was like having the best lesson I ever had with Peggy Williams and Marj Barstow combined. I felt like on a cellular level, something shifted in my whole being. I don't have any clue how that occurred. And all I can say, it was transient. It sort of woke me up. Yeah. And made me realize that there's things you can't explain. Yeah. That I don't understand. But I can have this visceral effect that, I knew that Peggy Williams had this ability with strong direction because of her own inner work. So I could pretty well figure out if I, through 50 years or whatever, work really diligently, maybe I'll come close to having that quality of touch that she had, knowing the trap of even thinking that, because I got to do my own work. But yeah. I figured there was a means whereby that could possibly lead. I had no clue how Sheikh Nazim had that ability, except for his own inner work. Yeah. It has to be that. It has to be basically coming back. We're all human beings. We all have the reactional pattern. He did too. But the ability, I think it all is in that space between stimulus and response. Whatever that is, that space is not in time, It operates differently. If you can tune into it, it's like what Robert Fripp, the great guitarist,
the liminal space,
the liminal zone, the liminal space.
Yeah.
It's all touches on that. And that's where I think the Alexander technique, that's the reason I brought him here. Because if we get wrapped up too much in the history, which is interesting, I can go on for hours talking, which I won't, but that, we're here talking. But the thing, it's not necessary, but the thing is that information from the past is just that. It's the past. It's not really happening. And projecting to the future isn't happening either. It's just a projection. But what is here is now. And the through line between studying with Sheikh Nazim, studying with Peggy Williams, Marj Barstow, Walter Carrington, any of the old guard, Marjorie Barlow and so on, Marj Barstow, it was all the same dance. Which was, inner work's the most important thing, and the inner work is one of subtraction and negation. That's what I linked up. The Alexander technique, it's not trying to hold on or do anything or accumulate information or all the books. What it is learning how to subtract. And that was the same thing with Sheikh Nazim and the same thing in the Feldenkrais work. So with that in mind, one time I'm sitting opposite him, just about like this, with a little table, and we're eating ice cream, and everyone was gone. The entourage had disappeared. I'm thinking, this is the only time in my life I can ask the man a real question. So I say, Dr. Feldenkrais, may I ask you a question? He's eating this ice cream, and he said, of course, Michael. I say, why do you do what you do? You are a hard worker. I watch you. You're not a slacker at all. And you obviously have more money than you probably spend for the rest of your life, but you still work. And he paused, and he gave me an absolutely straight answer. He said, well, Michael, when I work, everything is more alive. The walls are more alive, the chair is more alive, the person I'm with is more alive. That's why I do it. In other words, he was enhancing the flow and connection with life. I went, bless you.
And that applies probably to all very experienced teachers who are far beyond.
That came to mind as you said that was Elizabeth Walker. She was so deeply loving and kind. And it was the same thing that Feldenkrais was talking about, and the same hand on your back of Walter on my back, and Marge challenging me, but she did it from a place. I feel, it makes me emotional talking about them because of, and so what I tend to do in my own teaching, I work with these actors in LA. I mean, you get actors who come in who trained at Juilliard, or they trained at, Yale or Harvard, or they all of this stuff. But when they come to LA, everyone's the same. Boy, you hit those streets as an actor, either you know what you're doing or you don't. And I'm working with them, and they can be scared, and they can be almost, I had one actor, after he became a success, but one actor had no money, he's living in his car. I gave him lessons for free. I said, if you set up the space I teach in, you can come. For years I did. But the point about it is that I feel for them. And what I do is I feel lucky. All these teachers I've had, I feel like, why? If my burning question is why? Well, I figure I don't know why, except I've got to pay it forward. You can't hold on to anything you learn. You have to teach it. You have to pay it forward. You have to help someone who doesn't, who maybe needs a little guidance. You can't fix them, but you can say, oh, I don't think you need to go down that path. It's not going to go anyplace. That path might take you somewhere. So you do your best. And so I work with these guys and these ladies. The ladies are like beautiful, and the guys are like handsome and macho and, rapping, and, I've got one guy, a black guy with this great beard, and comes in with this wild clothes, but I just love this guy. And they feel this, and they trust me. That's the other thing. I never betray them. I try to be honest with them all the time.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
that's enough.
that's all these layers and dimensions of the work.
That's
and
right.
That's why it is so difficult to grasp. It starts with heads and necks, but it goes
it's so much more.
beyond.
And I'm going to finish on the last note. I asked Walter once, because Walter knew everyone. He knew everyone in the Gurdjieff work and Krishnamurti work, and he lets me bring in a Naqshbandi sheikh to cook a meal upstairs where I was living at his home. He was open. So I asked him once, I said, how come, Walter, you never became really interested in, for instance, the Gurdjieff work? Because he really knew people close to Gurdjieff, with Krishnamurti or so on. And he paused and he said, well, I just didn't think I needed it, because I felt the Alexander technique gave me all I wanted. I never understood that at that moment. My inside said, what do you mean, Walter? You're telling me Alexander was on the depth of, some of these other people? I didn't say that, but now I understand what he meant. And if you understand the Alexander technique as a process of negation on a deep level, of subtraction and keeping the space between stimulus and response, at some point you hit the place where the ultimate faulty sensory feedback is me. This is the me.
Yeah.
And if you want to go through that, you're going to end up at the same place, whether you're a Naqshbandi sheikh or a Sufi teacher or a yoga teacher in India or whatever. And Walter understood that. So thank you, Walter.
Thank you, Michael.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you so much. That was such an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I was complimenting about you to someone. I said she has real skill, because I feel like when you're sitting opposite her, she sees me and she hears me and she asks the right questions at the right time, and you feel like, oh, well, I'll just flow and it unfolds. It's a skill you have.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there we go, folks. That's the show.